Good morning and welcome to the Gold, Goats, and Guns short news here on YouTube and Periscope. My name's Tom Luongo. It is Monday, March 11th, 2019, and we're right getting close to that whole Brexit thing, and that's what I want to talk about today. So, a little housekeeping while we wait for some people to show up in the channel. You can follow my work over at tomluongo.me. You can also follow my work weekly at moneyandmarkets.com, as well as Strategic Culture Foundation as well. If you like what you hear today, please give a like and subscribe down below. Please share this as you can. It would be great to do all of those things. So let's get right to it, shall we? We've got some new stuff, new wrinkles as to what's actually happening with Brexit, and it's stuff that I alluded to last week, based on a report from the Bruges Group, which has now gone wider. It was just made to zero hedge. A more detailed version of that same article, which accuses Prime Minister Theresa May of Great Britain of allowing Germany to write her withdrawal agreement. Given the contents of said withdrawal agreement, why should anybody be shocked by this? Because it literally is the worst agreement she could have possibly put together. It literally looked like one written by the EU. As Nigel Farage has said on multiple occasions, this looks like a surrender document to somebody who just lost a war. They haven't lost a war at all. So that withdrawal agreement, and I absolutely recommend you read the article over at Zero Hedge today, written by John Petley, which was originally published at politicalight.com. It goes over the likelihood of the scenario, but we don't have any hard evidence that this existed, but we have enough circumstantial evidence that this has absolutely been the case. And the truth of the matter is now Theresa May has been exposed as a traitor and a stalking horse for the EU. Now, that's always been my default opinion about this entire matter, because she's always made this like so much more complicated than it needed to be. And like, why else would you do this when you have all the leverage in the world? All you have to do is threaten to leave on WTO terms and the EU will have to negotiate. But that was never the case. Theresa May was put in charge by the power elite in London to betray Brexit, because no one within the British aristocracy wants this to happen. So now we now have to go through the entire pantomime of making Brexit harder than it needs to be. It doesn't need to be this hard. It doesn't need to be this difficult, but it does when you're trying to go against a 75-year-old project that has the backing of the most evil people in the world. Period. That's what we're talking about. And there's fully 35 to 40% of the British populace who think that this is a bad idea in the first place, when the EU is a mess. It's terrible. On Thursday, ECB President Mario Draghi punted in a way that finally put a exclamation point on our calling him a liar for having enough tools in his toolbox to save the euro. He can't save the euro without a fiscal union. You can't create a fiscal union without a political union, and you don't have any of these things. And the truth of the matter is that the EU has tried to backdoor all of this, and now a military union as well has tried to backdoor all of this without any of the people of Europe actually voting on it or thinking that it was going to happen. And there's this tremendous inertia of people who have an opinion about what they think the EU is, as opposed to what the EU actually is, and that's what's kind of trying to mung this all the works up. But I've been looking at some polls, and I've been looking at some other people's YouTube channels and whatnot, and I come to the conclusion that something like 55% of Brits at this point just want Brexit over, and only 1/3 still want to remain. Labour is falling far behind the Tories, and the Tories have made a hash out of all of this, and they're still winning 40 to 31 in the latest polling numbers. 70 something, like 3 in 4 Brits do not want Mrs. May's deal. Of course they don't want Mrs. May's deal. It's worse than being in the EU. You get to stay in the, you get all the strictures of being in the EU without any of the rights of being in the EU. It's the most obnoxious and vile thing I think I've ever seen. It's the most obnoxious and vile betrayal of a person's mandate I've ever seen. And they all made the terrible political calculus of thinking that they could just dupe everybody in Britain into thinking, well, we'll give them leave in name only, and we can make this work. And that's exactly what Theresa May's been banking on. And now she's stuck. And now her cabinet is revolting against her. Not because they want to remain in, not because they want to leave the EU, but because now they've all been exposed as to what they are. No one, remember, never forget that the biggest problem right now is not that Parliament wants to leave the EU. The problem is the Parliament doesn't want to leave the EU, but they don't want to be the ones who actually stop the leaving from occurring. They want to stop it. They just don't want to be blamed for it. And that's what's going on. Only the really truly evil ones like Anna Soubry and Yvette Cooper and the rest of them, who are all just kind of, they're all just angling for better jobs after all this is over. Because remember, everybody at this point is now trying to figure out how they can best profit from this chaos, which is the most likely reason, which is the strongest argument, I should say, for why a no-deal Brexit is the most likely outcome at this point. So Wednesday's vote against a no deal is non-binding. Let's remind ourselves about this. Okay, Tuesday they're going to vote on Mrs. May's deal. It's going to go down in flames, maybe only by 100 votes this time as opposed to 230. That's fine. But on Wednesday, they then get to vote as to whether or not they're going to take no deal Brexit off the table. That's a non-binding vote. It doesn't mean anything. It's all virtue signaling. Same thing when they go to say, well, we want an extension of Article 50, because they first have to try and they have to do that in that order, apparently, in order to try and signal to the EU that they want to have a deal. There's only one problem, and as I said on Friday, why does anybody think that the EU is automatically going to grant this extension? They have to get unanimous consent. And the EU is not unanimously behind their negotiating tactics for Brexit. So I find this really fascinating that at the end of the day, the no deal vote is non-binding. Right? Ruling out no deal. Article 50 extension, also not binding until they change the law. Article 50 is an act of Parliament. It is the law of the land and nothing more. And meaning Parliament has got to do serious work between now and March 29th to undo that act of law. This is why May is in Strasbourg right now trying to salvage all this. And she's not going in there and I'm fighting for the Brits. She's going there all like trying to figure out how they can sell another rotten corpse to the British people and to the and the Parliament. And they can't, because everybody knows it. It's not the Irish backstop that's the problem. It's everything else that's the problem as well. Forget the fact that the backstop is illegal. Forget the fact that it goes against multiple treaties. Forget the fact that an extension can only last till about April 13th. Because at that point, then the Brits, if they're not going to leave the EU by then they have to stand for European parliamentary elections. And that's right around the middle of April, when, guys like Nigel Farage need to go out there and start campaigning to put a proper vote together for the May elections for European Parliament. So this whole idea that they can extend this to June 29th legally is nonsense. They're going to do it illegally. But everything about this entire process has been illegal. The only thing that was legal was the legally binding vote passed by Parliament that they would respect the will of the people in a Brexit referendum. It's insane. It's all insane. So this continues to go on. Everybody continues to try and hold to their guns when all of this is falling apart. As I said on Friday, Theresa May would have never come out and said, it's either my deal or no Brexit if she wasn't trying to push her deal through. If she was confident that she could get an extension of Article 50. Notice how nobody over on the EU side of things in the last couple of weeks has said anything about an extension. Because they're not convinced they're going to get it. There are a significant number of Brits out there lobbying directly. People like Matteo Salvini and Viktor Orban to vote against the extension if it comes up. So I don't see how they get out of this with anything other than a no-deal Brexit, even if it has to take a little while longer. Because here's the kick. The ERG is going to dig their heels in now. They're not even going to go for an extension where they become prime minister, where one of them becomes prime minister, because at that point, if the withdrawal agreement goes through without a legally binding way to get out of the backstop, which is exactly what Jacob Rees-Mogg has said the entire time. So the only thing that will get the ERG group to vote for May's withdrawal agreement is the one thing that Brussels won't give them, which is a legally binding mechanism by which to get out of the backstop. So, but if that happens, if May is somehow able to get that, then she's going to have to step down. Come hell or high water, she may have to step down as of Tuesday night. But then who takes over? There's no guarantee a Brexiteer will take over, but Boris Johnson is now dusting off his resume. Yeah, all of this is starting to look like if the people who vote for Brexit and want Brexit just hold their water and just withdraw their consent a little while longer, all of these feckless and disgusting people, all of these freaking traitors, will eventually have to fall in line and deal with what's happening. At that point, expect in the short term for the capital markets to punish the United Kingdom as hard as possible. Money will be withdrawn from British capital markets. The pound will get hammered. The equity markets will get hammered. All of that stuff. There will be massive run on British assets in the short term. Matter of fact, between now and then, I fully expect that to get worse. As we get to Brexit Day. I also don't take off the table a false flag event similar to the Joe Cox murder right before the Brexit vote in 2016 to try and scare everybody into allowing for an illegal extension of all of this and to nullify Brexit completely. Don't put any of that past any of these people. It's all coming in the next 2 weeks. Just like we saw in the original Brexit vote. They know what the tenor of the country is. At this point, the British people are embarrassed for their leadership. They're angry that they haven't been listened to. They're furious that they've been lied to. And most of the people sitting in Parliament now do not want to lose their jobs come the next election, which could easily be sometime this year, a new general election. Because if May steps down and the Tories can't come to an agreement as to who is going to be the next prime minister, then a general election happens after that. Gotta love it. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. But I think this thing, slowly but surely, is going to grind its way to the inevitable conclusion that the EU is going to lose. And Italy they're looking right over Britain's shoulder going, what's next for us? Same thing with Hungary. Same thing with the rest of them. Don't let Salvini and don't let the Mayo fool you. They're soft pedaling just how badly they want to get out of the Eurozone. You watch. All right, you guys, this has been the Gold Guts and Guns short news for today, March 11th, 2019. I'm going to be on tonight again with the full hour live stream that I do on Monday nights at 8 and Friday nights at 8:30. You're more than welcome to stop by. We're going to talk about this, other geopolitical things, and probably something irrelevant to all of it, because every once in a while, we got to talk about something fun, because guess what? If you're not having fun, you're doing this wrong. All right, you guys have a great afternoon. Take care. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.